If you land up doing the transplants more quickly or sooner, does that mean the list is growing that much bigger of people that require a transplant that are unable to get it?
Well, I mean, ideally we would transplant everybody who's being dialyzed. Ideally we would transplant all patients on dialysis now. So if this year there's 650, if assuming they can undergo the surgery, we would be transplanting them all. We need kidneys to do that. So, and there's 100,000 people, waiting for a transplant in addition. So, yes, I mean, the number of transplants would be greater. When you say the list, I guess you're referring to the cadaveric list of kidneys that are available. Yes, it would. I mean, it can't be both ways. Either we have a kidney available to do it, or we don't. Right now we don't, and so the list will stay at what it is until it's supply and demand. We have to increase the supply. And the only way to do that, in lieu of paying people, which will never occur in this country, is to go outside humans and go to an animal or an artificial kidney.
Anything else we should know or that we should have asked that we haven't asked?
Well, you probably asked others. There are some new drugs. As far as PKD per se, there are a number of trials on different drugs that people are trying, different pathways. There's sort of an interesting anecdote that there was cystic fibrosis, which was a common disease in Caucasians that affects the lung and the pancreas. There was a patient, I can't remember in the last little while, I don't remember exactly when, who had PKD and cystic fibrosis, and the PKD didn't seem to be as bad. Paradoxically, two different processes, but the PKD seemed to be better, so people started thinking, maybe we should attack the cystic fibrosis gene, and maybe, so there are studies going on using drugs for cystic fibrosis to see what it does to PKD. That's sort of one interesting thing. There are new, V2 receptor antagonists, the tolvaptan, with all its problems that you've probably heard about from others. There's newer ones that have a higher affinity to the V2 receptor that are being tried. We'll see. But those drugs have problems. People urinate a lot and drink a lot, and there's liver toxicity with those drugs. There's a drug called metformin, which has been tried by some people, but there are a lot of trials with that still. There are dietary things people are doing, and specifically looking at what are called the osmol intake that we ingest. The osmol is the total particulate. You can think of it like that. It's a term from chemistry, osmoles, but how many particles you have in your diet. And so the thought is that if you've taken less of those, you'll urinate less, and that might help with the drugs like tolvaptan. It's a major problem, the amount of times people have to get up to urinate on those drugs in the middle of the night too. So people are trying to work on that. And then there are other drugs that affect RNA that people are working on. There's 5 or 6 major categories of drugs in clinical trials right now. So we'll see. That's one approach. As I say, the other approach will be that in lieu of these things having a major effect, we'll have a xenotransplant or artificial kidney, and we'll say, okay, you have PKD, you have other diseases of the kidney, no matter what you have, we'll just do this, and okay, your problem's gone. The analogy is getting a new car as opposed to replacing every little part all the time. At some point you say, just replace the whole thing.
PKD is definitely a genetic disease, right? So we know that it passes down from family member to family member. Is there work being done on genetic, like any kind of CRISPR type work being done and looking at that yet?
It's possible, theoretically, to do that. The problem with the CRISPR studies is that they're not perfect. And so you'll see a lot of press about different CRISPR techniques, but they don't only affect necessarily that particular gene. And so it's still a matter of research. I'm not aware of any trials out there, but theoretically, it is a mutation. It's a mutation in one gene, the other one's normal. So conceptually, it should be something that if you had the ideal approach to switch that particular mutation to another one and normalize it, yes. Yes, the other issue is, as you've probably heard, is that PKD doesn't just affect the kidney. It affects a number of different tissues in the body. Every cell has the abnormal gene. Every cell in the body, not just the kidney, but like many, many different diseases, you can make a mutation in organ X and it does nothing. So, you don't have finger problems in PKD. All the fingers have the PKD abnormality too, but they're not affected because that gene is not important to generate a finger or create its function. So we have about 20,000 genes or so. When you get a mutation in one of them, it's throughout your body, but you only see, for most diseases, specific, what we call a phenotype, which means an abnormality in specific organs. With PKD, it can affect, as people know, a number of different organs. So, but if you did the CRISPR, you'd be correcting it everywhere.
Interesting.
So yes, it's a very good question. In general, many diseases could be ameliorated that way. But it's still not something that's going to be widespread, mainly because we don't have the perfect CRISPR enzyme yet. And you will potentially target other genes and mutate those and create, again, do no harm, create additional problems.
I do have one more question, and it may be such an obvious thing, but they tell you with PKD you should be drinking a lot of water. You should be filtering your system through, and it's going to help. Kidney stones going to help, whatever. But you just mentioned, that of course the idea if you eat and you have to process and balance chemicals and all that, it makes the kidney kind of work harder. And if you're filtering through all this excess water, an extra liter or two every single day times whatever it is for years, is that really good for you then?
You ask a number of complicated questions. It requires a bit of a complicated answer. I will first say that just a very specific answer, and then I'll get more generic. The specific answer is if you drink more water, your filtration really isn't changing. It's staying around 120. You're absorbing less water. So of the 120, you'll pee out more because you absorbed less. So if, let's say you drink a liter, you filter 120, you absorb 119, you pee out a liter. You drink 3 liters, you're still going to filter around 120. You'll absorb 117 and pee out the 3. So that's sort of the physiology. Now you bring up a general question, not just in kidney disease, but it's a question we get asked every week. How much water should I drink? There was just an article in the New York Times about that. It's a very common question, and there's a lot of sort of voodoo answers that people give without it being based on data. The answer is somewhat surprisingly and sort of difficult to understand, but it's how much water you should drink is the minimum amount of water that your kidney will put out if your intake is 0. So what did I just say? Imagine your intake is 0, your kidney's going to still put out urine. That's how much you have to drink as a floor. Now the question then becomes how much should you go above that? If you go above that, your kidney's going to pee it out. So you go home and take your Lake Arrowhead water tonight, it ends up in the toilet. You're going to pee it out. You take 5 2-liter bottles of Coca-Cola, you're going to pee it out too. So in general, the correct answer is drink based on whether you're thirsty or not. Now I'm not talking about someone who goes, to a sauna all the time, who's sweating a lot, or a long distance runner who's losing a lot of water outside the kidney. That's a separate story where you have to worry about your salt intake, electrolyte intake, and water intake. But in general, people are told just drink this, and it's healthy for this, for X, Y, and Z reasons. There's no great data on that if you really scour the literature. So in general, I would tell a normal person, and tell you also, drink what you need to drink based on your thirst. There's no good evidence that you drinking more than that and urinating more is going to do anything. Now there are medical issues, people with kidney stones or people with other, I'm talking about just someone who has everything else normal. You're not doing anything except spending a lot of money, and it's all ending up as urine. So in general, go by what your thirst is telling you. That's how much you have to drink. If you want to drink more than that, drink another liter if you want. But in your heart, you should know you're probably not doing much.
That's even if you have PKD.
There are no good studies in PKD, and it's all of nephrology processes and problems. People ask this in every disease. There's no good evidence that drinking more or above a certain amount is going to make any difference that I'm aware of. I mean, there might be a paper that I'm not aware of, but I don't know of anyone who's ever shown that with PKD at a certain stage, drinking more water or X amount of water or doing this with your water intake is going to change what happens. And again, it's a very hard study to do. How are we going to know what happened if you didn't drink the water? We can't do the paired study, so we have to do it in groups of patients, and it's only going to be valid if they're all identical. You know, it's just a very hard, you can't do the study within a given individual. I guess we could have you watch your progression without water, and then for the next 2 or 3 years put you on water and see what happened, but we would still intellectually never know what would have happened had we kept you off the water, because we're doing it not simultaneously at the same point in time.
Cancel the water order.